The Chicago Bulls get another one as they beat the Atlanta Hawks 128-123. We're going to be talking about the key takeaways from tonight's win. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are talking about the key takeaways from tonight's win against the Atlanta Hawks. And so I always like to start with the theme of the game. These are just points that really describe the game that we saw today. And so there's 3 points that I think come out of this game. And so the first one being resilience and composure. That's exactly what the Chicago Bulls did today in this one. They didn't start off well, but they fought their way back starting in the second quarter, where they would go on to win that quarter 30-23. In fact, they ended the quarter with an 8-2 run. And just when it came down to clutch time in the fourth quarter, this team found a way to get it done, and it wasn't always pretty. In fact, at one point in the fourth quarter, they were 3 of 7. The offense looked stagnant, but this team stayed together. They didn't panic, and they were able to get it done in the fourth quarter. And so resilience and composure, that is point number 1. And then point number 2, swarming defense for the Chicago Bulls. I thought that they did a terrific job, especially going into the third quarter, with the way that they were able to get deflections, and they were able to just really turn their defense into offense. And it helped them speed up the offense too, because they scored 41 points in the third quarter. In fact, they outscored the Atlanta Hawks 41-34. Both teams combined for 75 points. But I think that that was key point number 2. You just saw a swarming defense for the Chicago Bulls really throughout the second half. And so lastly, strength in numbers. That is real for the Chicago Bulls, as they had 8 players that got into double digits. And this is huge for the Chicago Bulls because they have added more players into the double digits or double figures each game. And so they had 6 players in double figures in game 1. They had 7 in game 2. Now they come back and they have 8 here in game 3. And that helped them really, just get this game, because this was an up and down type of game. It was very back and forth. At one point, there were 11 lead changes and 5 ties. Obviously, there was more than that as the game went along, but still, it took the entire team effort to get this win. And so those are the key points, and really, I think the main theme out of this one: strength in numbers, swarming defense, resilience, and composure. And so with that being said, I always like to go ahead now and talk about my MVPs. And so there are a couple players that are MVPs for me tonight. There's 2 players that are going to split it, but I think that you can give this to the entire team. I think that this is once again just a huge team effort out there. I think that everybody deserves an MVP, including the coaching staff. I think that Billy Donovan did a great job, but let's go ahead and jump into, I think, just individual performers that really stood out in this game. And so the first player that stood out for me was Ayo Dosunmu, because Ayo Dosunmu, yet again, coming off the bench, was huge for the Chicago Bulls. In fact, just looking at his numbers today, Ayo, 21 points. He was plus 12 in the plus minus box score, so he led the Chicago Bulls there. He had 2 assists. He had 3 rebounds, 3 of 4 from the free throw line, 4 of 6 from downtown, and 7 of 10 from the field. And so what I loved about Ayo Dosunmu today is, once again, in the fourth quarter, when this team needed baskets, this guy hit some huge shots for the team. And he also continued to get downhill, just making those timely plays. And you could just tell that Ayo Dosunmu is very locked in, and just he's leading this team at another level this year. And so Ayo Dosunmu, he is MVP number 1 for me. I loved what I saw from him off the bench, hitting threes and leading this team in scoring. And so next, MVP number 2 for me, it's going to be Josh Giddey. I thought that Josh Giddey had a terrific night tonight. As of number 1, he did a great job as far as getting to the boards. And so 18 points in this one, plus 3 in the plus minus box score. He did have the 3 turnovers, 1 block, 1 steal, 5 assists, 13 rebounds, 2 of 4 from the free throw line, 2 of 5 from deep, and 7 of 14 from the field. And so, look, Josh Giddey, a terrific job with rebounding the basketball. In fact, one of his rebounds essentially pretty much won the game because he goes in, he drives, and he misses the shot, but he's able to tip it back to Tre Jones. I believe that sequence ends in a foul where Tre Jones goes to the line and pretty much ices the game. But I loved what I saw there. And then defensively from Josh Giddey, there were a couple moments that I loved with him. And so he had a block shot that led to a layup. He also had a very good steal or deflection that he pretty much made the read where Jalen Johnson for the Atlanta Hawks is diving down. He reads that, he dives, and he knocks the ball away. And so that leads to another basket here for the Chicago Bulls. And so he also hit a huge three in this one too, pretty late. And that also helped the Chicago Bulls. And so, Josh Giddey, man, clutch plays. And I think that this is probably, one of his best games so far. And I just think that, man, it's only going to pick up some more for Josh Giddey as you see that clutch three late in the game. And so Josh Giddey was MVP number 2 on the night for me. And then MVP number 3, they are splitting the award, and that is going to be Tre Jones and then also to Nikola Vučević. I think that both of these players played outstanding, and I'll go ahead and I'll start with Vooch here. And so with Vooch today, he almost had a triple-double in this game. And so Vooch, 17 points, plus 11 in the plus-minus box score. He did have the 3 turnovers, but 2 steals, 9 assists, 17 rebounds in this game. And he was also 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 1 of 4 from deep, and then 7 of 11 from the field. And so what I like about Vooch and his game is just really, he's been steady. I think that he's really been steady over the first 3 games. And it's something where Vooch, you can see he's not necessarily forcing it. Defensively, I think that he's doing a great job as far as just being in spots. I think that he's using his length very well because he's getting, his arms up. He got a nice little deflection today. It was actually between him and Buzelis. They had a very good defensive sequence that led to a basket. He had a great pass to Kevin Huerter for a layup as well. And he's finding ways to get to the box and make some plays too, because there was one play where he dives in to post up. Clearly, he had a mismatch, and there were 3 players from the Atlanta Hawks that swarm him. He fights to get the ball off of the ground, and he goes up for a tough layup today. And so Vooch, man, doing a little bit of everything. He was steady for this team. And then next, Tre Jones. Look, Tre Jones continues to ball out for this team. And I really think that when you look at all the re-signings over free agency, Tre Jones will have to be one of those players that you look at and you say, look, he might be the best re-signing here of the offseason. I think that Tre Jones is showing it every night so far for the Chicago Bulls. And so 14 points, -1 in the plus-minus box score. He did have 2 turnovers. He had the 1 block. He had 2 steals, but the 9 assists to go along with the 7 rebounds, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 2 of 4 from deep, and 5 of 10 from the field. And once again, what we saw from Tre Jones is just really some great basketball IQ, which is really what we've been seeing, I think, throughout the season, for Tre Jones. And I think that when you see Tre Jones play on a night-to-night basis, you see why the Chicago Bulls were comfortable in moving off of Lonzo Ball. And again, not taking anything away from Lonzo Ball. Clearly, Tre Jones is not that, but he's making those type of plays where you sometimes wonder, is there 5 Tre Jones on the floor? Because defensively, he's done a terrific job as far as fighting in the post and finding ways to get over top of the post player, to knock it away, to either get the steal or get it off to a teammate. He's knocking down big threes out there. He also, too, was able to follow up Buzelis in transition and get a nice layup there. And so just making heady plays like that, heady assists, and just slashing and making tough plays and going through contact. And so Tre Jones, a calming force for the Chicago Bulls. He splits MVP number 3 with Vooch today. And so now I want to go ahead and jump into just really the rest of the starters today and the rest of the players and just take a look at really what everybody else did. And so, starting with Isaac Okoro. And so with Isaac Okoro, I was very impressed with what I saw with him today. And look, I'm not sure if anybody else, across Bulls content creation had been, thinking that Isaac Okoro was going to turn it around. I really thought that I liked what I saw from him, the first 2 games, especially with his energy defensively. It didn't always go well, but I just thought that if he played with that energy, eventually the offense was going to click for him tonight. And that's exactly what happened. So he got a nice layup. He also, too, was able to find an and one off a tip at midcourt there. And so I believe it was off of Josh Giddey's layup that got wedged between the rim. They go and they get to a tip ball. He ends up getting an and one there. And so he also knocked down a 3-point shot. And so I love the activity. And I just like the fact that Isaac Okoro, he was fearless out there. And I think that when you see this type of night from him, this is essentially what you're going to get from Isaac Okoro. If we see him score, 20 plus points, that's great. But I think that you can feel his defensive presence out there. It's something that's contagious with this team. And I'm not saying that he can't be in the starting lineup. I could see, Billy Donovan making those adjustments on a night-to-night basis or depending on who has the hot hand. But still, I loved what I saw from Isaac Okoro. I thought that he had a very good game today. And so next, we had a very nice game from Modest Buzelis. And so with Modest Buzelis, look, I think that Modest Buzelis started off cold, but I just like the way that he was able to attack in this game. And so 16 points, he was +3 in the plus-minus box score today. He did have 1 turnover. He had 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 of 3 from the free throw line, 2 of 7 from deep, and 6 of 14 from the field. And so you see that Modest Buzelis really didn't get things going from downtown, and I do think that it was a cold start for him, but I loved how he was able to get downhill, and he was able to use his left hand. And so if you got a chance to watch this game, that is something that Stacey King of the broadcast team also talked about, was his ability to get downhill and get to his left. And so the left hand, it's alive for Modest Buzelis. And so I love that. And I think that Modest Buzelis, man, he might have had the highlight of the night because, man, he had a fabulous kind of just a dribble combination. He got to a side step through, tightrope the sideline, and went to an emphatic reverse jam. And so it was absolutely nasty here where he goes baseline and goes reverse. And I mean, I thought that brought the house down in the third quarter. And so Modest Buzelis, man, just continues to show us flashes. And what I like best about his performance tonight is he answered the challenge. And I talked about that in the last video. I was wondering, would Modest Buzelis go ahead and answer the challenge? And that's exactly what he did today. He knew he had to play much better, and we saw that from Modest Buzelis. And so he was solid tonight. And so next, I want to go ahead and jump into the rest of the players here on the bench. And so I want to start with a player that played very, very well off the bench, and that is Kevin Huerter. And so Kevin Huerter, man, he was on a heater here. So 15 points, +8 in the plus-minus box score. He did have 4 personal fouls out there, 2 turnovers. He had a block. He had 2 assists in this one, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 1 of 3 from deep, and 6 of 8 from the field in 21 minutes. And so every time that I see Kevin Huerter out there, I'm thinking that I'm looking at the player from his Atlanta Hawks days, because, man, he looks just like that player that helped the Atlanta Hawks get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that they were talking about it throughout the broadcast, where he had a huge game, which essentially got them to the Eastern Conference Finals. And, man, he looks great with his off-ball movement today. And at one point for Kevin Huerter, he didn't miss a shot. Actually, he was 4 of 4 from the field. He had a nice transition block shot. So defensively, he was active. I thought he had a quick 9 points in this one. And he's not just sitting there shooting the 3-point shot as well. And so I thought that Kevin Huerter, again, showed up for the Chicago Bulls, and he was huge tonight. The next, another player that played very well off the bench for this team was Patrick Williams. And so Patrick Williams tonight, 12 points, +1 in the plus minus box score. He had 2 assists, 3 rebounds. He also was 2 of 3 from the free throw line, 2 of 7 from deep, and 4 of 9 from the field. And so with Patrick Williams, what I liked about him tonight is just that you could see that the confidence was there for him, because he didn't necessarily start off shooting the basketball very well, but he stayed with it. He didn't stop shooting the basketball. So I love the fact that he was aggressive like that. There was one play defensively where he literally just runs over the person trying to screen him. And so that physicality is something that, man, we just want to see that from Patrick Williams consistently. And so that was one of the plays that I marked down. I loved seeing him run through a player. I absolutely love that. And then also too, the rebound where he gets physical and he gets the layup. He missed the and one. I love that. He had a jab step 3-pointer as well. You can tell that Patrick Williams is absolutely locked in this season. I thought that he had a huge contribution off the bench for this team tonight. And so next, I think another player that was solid for us tonight, even though he didn't have, just a huge, just kind of statistical night, it was Julian Phillips. I think that Julian Phillips, he's showing as well that he can come in, he can be an irritant for this team defensively. And also too, we knew he could knock down the corner 3-point shot, which is exactly what he did tonight. He almost got an and one. And so 5 points, -3 in the plus minus box score. He was 1 of 2 from deep and 2 of 4 from the field in his 10 minutes. And so I thought that he played a very good 10 minutes for this team. And so next, Jalen Smith. And so Jalen Smith didn't have the best night tonight. You see that he only got 7 minutes today, 0 of 4 from the field, -8. Only 3 rebounds today, 2 turnovers. And you know what? It just wasn't Jalen Smith's night tonight. But as the great Dwayne Wade would say, sometimes you think it's your night. It's not your night. Sometimes you think it's not going to be your night, and it is your night. But I expect for Jalen Smith to approach it in that manner. And I think that things will turn around for him, because at this point in time, there is no Zach Collins. And I think that Billy Donovan is going to have to use him. And so he'll continue to keep sending him out there. And so even though it's a tough night for him, I think that he'll be just fine moving forward. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into the team box score and just look at some of the key takeaways from that for the Chicago Bulls. And so, I think that the first key takeaway here is that the Chicago Bulls are still struggling with the turnovers. And so in this game, they had 18 turnovers to the Atlanta Hawks 6. And so this is something that they're going to have to really clean up. In fact, I think that this is one of the reasons why the Atlanta Hawks were able to really stay in this game, because you see that they gave up the 24 points off of those turnovers. And then next, I think another thing that kind of stands out in this game is just the up and down type of game that it was. And so you see that the Bulls lead that category 22-21. This was very much back and forth. And then, with the paint touches here, and so the points in the paint, you see that the Atlanta Hawks win that 66-64. I absolutely love that the Bulls had an answer for that, and they kept going right back at the Atlanta Hawks. And so that just lets you know that this team is not just settling for the 3-ball. And then, speaking of the 3-ball today, and so I think a pretty good percentage for the most part. I'll take it, at the 37.2%. I think that this team can shoot a little bit better than that, but still 37.2. They lead in that category. And so that's a good sign. I think that one of the things that the Bulls wish they could have had back here is the free throws. And so I think that they could have done a much better job there. 16 of 21 from the free throw line. And so I think that they left some money there at the line that could have certainly helped them for their bottom line as far as winning this game, but still the Bulls get it done. And so, they were 52.2% from the field. And so that is very solid. You see that the Atlanta Hawks were 50% from the field. And so once again, the team's going back and forth. I talked about the combined score in the third quarter. It really picked up. And so, finally, just looking at some final takeaways here from this game. First, I got to go ahead and give Billy Donovan a lot of credit, because I think that Billy Donovan made the adjustments that he needed to make out there for this team. He wasn't scared to go small. He wasn't scared to take Jalen Smith out of the game. And really, it helped this team go ahead and get the win. And so I think that you're seeing Billy Donovan going ahead, mixing it up, going with the hot hand. And this is what we wanted to see from Billy Donovan, him getting into his coaching bag. And so, the team is definitely, on a different level right now. They have a different feel to them this year. And I think the same can be said about Billy Donovan. It seems that he's taken it up a notch as a coach this year. So a great job today. Next, just the team effort. So a terrific team effort for the Chicago Bulls. Again, you just can't say that enough, with the 8 players that were able to get in double figures. And I feel like that even the players that just really didn't have that much on the stat sheet, they still did something for this team that helped them get the win. And so let's see if they can continue it as the Bulls get ready to have another game here come Wednesday. And so just a terrific win for the Chicago Bulls. You guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking as the Chicago Bulls get set to take on the Sacramento Kings here. And so we will be talking about that game coming up here as the Bulls take on the Sacramento Kings. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, look, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.